They made me cook, serve, and clean for my own farewell party. Mid-toast, my husband announced our divorce, said I wasn't polished enough for his rising status. I just smiled. The next morning, something arrived in the mail. By evening, the same people who mocked me were calling, pleading, apologizing. "I still can't believe you're leaving," Andrew said, grinning like he'd just told the best joke in the world. I didn't answer. I just stared out the car window, watching morning traffic crawl along. My stomach was in knots, but I kept my face calm. If I showed even a flicker of what I felt, he'd notice, and I wasn't in the mood for his teasing. "Big day for you," he added, tapping the steering wheel like he couldn't wait to get there. "You'll want to remember every second." Something in his tone made my skin prickle. But I forced a little laugh. "Yeah. I'm sure I will." Before we go deeper, thank you for being here to hear my story. If you believe kindness and dignity belong in every workplace, subscribe. It's free and helps empower more women like us. Now let's keep going. The office parking lot came into view and my chest tightened. It looked the same as always, rows of cars, neat hedges, glass doors reflecting the sun, but today it felt heavier somehow. Like the building itself knew what was waiting for me. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of disinfectant. I walked through the familiar halls, my heels clicking against the floor, and caught the faintest shift in atmosphere. Conversations paused as I passed. Smiles seemed too quick, too tight. "Morning, Taylor," one coworker said as she walked by, her voice cheerful but her eyes darting away. "Morning," I replied, giving her the same polite smile I'd worn for years. At my desk, a stack of paperwork sat like it had been waiting just for me. Even on my last day, no one spared me the mundane tasks. I slipped off my coat, logged in, and began sorting emails. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. From across the room, a group of colleagues whispered behind their hands. One of them glanced my way, then quickly turned back. "Does she know? Andrew's really doing it. She's going to be so." The rest was lost in a low murmur as I turned back to my screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, stiff and cold. Andrew strolled past my desk not long after, whistling under his breath. He leaned down, his cologne sharp in my nose. "Don't eat too much at lunch," he said quietly. "You'll want room for later." I blinked at him. "What does that mean?" His grin widened. "You'll see." I wanted to press him, but something in his eyes told me not to. So I went back to my work, though my mind couldn't stay on it. By noon, Andrew's voice boomed across the office. "All right, everyone. Break room. Time to send Taylor off in style." Chairs scraped back, chatter filled the air. Some people looked excited. Others avoided my gaze. I trailed behind them, heart thudding. Maybe they'd bought a cake. Maybe there'd be a speech or a little card signed by everyone. Nothing fancy, I wasn't expecting that. Just something kind. When we reached the break room, Andrew spread his arms dramatically. "This is it, folks. The grand farewell." I waited, a flicker of hope sparking in my chest. Then he said it. "Taylor, we decided you should spend your last day doing what you're best at, taking care of us. You're going to cook, serve, and clean for your farewell party." The room erupted with laughter. My mouth went dry. "Wait, what?" Andrew stepped closer, smirking. "Come on. Don't be shy. You've always been so good at helping out. This is your time to shine." Someone handed me an apron. "Go on, Taylor," a voice said. "We're starving." Heat burned my cheeks. My hands stayed at my sides. "You're serious?" "Of course." Andrew chuckled. "Tradition, remember? We give every departing team member a special send-off. This is yours." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Most just watched, waiting. I thought about saying no. About throwing the apron back in his face. But I didn't. Years of being quiet, agreeable, dependable, those habits were hard to break. So I took the apron and tied it around my waist. "That's our Taylor," Andrew said. "Always a team player." The laughter started again. I turned to the counter, hands trembling as I picked up a knife. I tried to block out the voices, but they still reached me. "She's actually doing it. Unbelievable. This is too good." Every word felt like a slap. But I kept chopping vegetables, kept stirring pans, kept plating dishes like my life depended on it. Behind me, Andrew raised his glass. "Here's to Taylor, the most dependable employee we've ever had." The sarcasm in his voice was razor sharp. I smiled. Or at least I think I did. My face felt numb. Not a single person offered to help. Not one. When I finally set down the last plate, my arms ached. Andrew clapped me on the back. Well done. Now don't forget to clean up. The laughter that followed was louder this time. But I didn't cry. Not yet. The clatter of forks and muffled laughter filled the break room as I stood frozen, clutching the apron in my hands. My fingers were stiff, clammy against the cheap fabric. For a moment I thought I could still save face. I could toss the apron back on the counter and walk out. No one could make me do this. But then I looked around the room. 15 pairs of eyes stared back, some wide with curiosity, others glittering with poorly masked amusement. A few darted away when I met their gaze, but no one said a word. Not a single voice rose to stop what was unfolding. Andrew's smirk deepened. Come on, Taylor. Don't be shy now. You've always been the caretaker. Let's make this farewell truly unforgettable. My throat felt dry. I wanted to speak, to tell him this was wrong, that I wasn't a prop in his little show. But my voice wouldn't come. It was as if all those years of biting my tongue had trained me too well. So I slipped the apron over my head. There's our Taylor, someone said with a laugh, and a ripple of chuckles followed. As I tied the strings at my back, my mind spun. Was this a prank? A cruel inside joke I was never meant to understand? Or was this just Andrew's idea of humor? Twisted, petty, and public? Hope you don't mind handling the whole spread, Andrew added. The team's starving. The sound of chairs scraping back made me flinch. Colleagues settled at the long table, already chatting among themselves. I could hear the hiss of a soda can opening, the clink of ice against glass. I moved to the counter, scanning the ingredients laid out. A carton of eggs. A bag of rice. Packs of chicken thighs still in their shrink wrap. Vegetables haphazardly dumped from grocery bags. No plan. No recipe. Just a pile of supplies as if someone had thrown it together last minute. Better hurry, a voice called from the table. We're on a tight lunch break. I gripped a knife, knuckles white. My hands moved mechanically, slicing onions, dicing peppers, while behind me laughter swelled. Andrew leaned back in his chair, one arm slung over the backrest. Remember that time you fixed the coffee machine single-handed? You've always had magic hands in the kitchen too. The sarcasm clung to his words like grease. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my movements steady. My mind felt like a fogged mirror. Every word they spoke echoed in that haze. Did she even get a goodbye card? Someone whispered. I think Andrew said he'd take care of it. Oh right. This must be what he meant. The murmur of their conversation carried easily in the small room. As I stirred a pot of rice, I felt sweat bead on my forehead. Heat from the stovetop prickled my skin. My legs ached from standing, but I didn't dare sit down. Plates began stacking up on the counter. Chicken seared, vegetables roasted, rice fluffed. I arranged them as neatly as I could, hands trembling slightly. Taylor, make sure mine doesn't have onions, one colleague called out without looking up from her phone. An extra chicken for me, another added. You know I hate small portions. The requests kept coming, each one sharper than the last. Andrew's voice rang out again. She's doing great, isn't she? The perfect hostess. Applause broke out, scattered and mocking. When I finally brought the first plate to the table, Andrew raised his glass. To Taylor, the most helpful staff we've ever had. Always ready to serve. The others followed, raising their glasses, laughter rippling through the room. I set the plate down carefully, afraid my shaking hands would spill it. Here you go, I said softly. Andrew looked up at me, his grin wide. Don't be shy, Taylor. Smile for your audience. Something inside me twisted. I felt my lips stretch, but it didn't reach my eyes. I made round after round from the counter to the table, balancing plates, refilling drinks, collecting empty dishes. My blouse clung to my back, damp from the heat. Taylor, more napkins here. Can you grab some ice? There's a spill. Mind mopping it up? They kept eating, kept laughing. No one offered to help. No one said thank you. Once the last crumbs were scraped off their plates, Andrew leaned back in his chair, patting his stomach. That was fantastic. Really. You've outdone yourself. The sarcasm in his tone stung like a slap. Now, don't forget to tidy up before you head out, he added, waving toward the pile of dirty dishes stacked in the sink. Laughter erupted again, louder this time, less restrained. I stood frozen for a moment, gripping an empty tray so tightly my fingers ached. Chop chop, Taylor, someone said with a chuckle. The break room emptied slowly, chairs scraping back as my colleagues filed out. A few gave me pitying glances. Most didn't look at me at all. Soon it was just me in the mess. Crumbs littered the floor. Greasy plates and glasses crowded every surface. The smell of chicken and detergent hung in the air. I turned on the faucet, watching water gush over the stack of plates. My hands moved on autopilot, scrubbing, rinsing, stacking while my chest felt hollow. The echo of their laughter still rang in my ears. Andrew's voice drifted in from the hallway, loud and amused. Best farewell party ever. She really went all out for us. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. Not here. Not yet. I scrubbed harder, the sponge squeaking against porcelain. My hands ached, my back screamed, but I didn't stop. When the last dish was stacked on the drying rack, I pulled off the apron and folded it neatly on the counter. I stood there for a moment, staring at my reflection in the window. My face was flushed, hair clinging to my temples. But my eyes, they looked calm. Too calm. Something in me shifted then. A cold, steady sort of resolve. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The sound of the faucet echoed in the empty break room as I scrubbed the last greasy pan. The sponge squeaked against the metal, the water running warm over my raw, reddened hands. The room felt heavier now without their laughter filling it, like all the air had been sucked out, leaving me alone with the smell of detergent and roasted chicken. I set the pan down to dry and leaned against the counter for a moment. My back ached. My feet throbbed from hours of standing. But it wasn't the physical pain that got to me. It was the sharp, hollow ache settling in my chest. I stared at my reflection in the streaked microwave door. My eyes looked unfamiliar, wide and glassy. There wasn't anger there, not yet. Just exhaustion. A deep, bone-level kind of tired that comes when you realize how little you matter to people you spent years serving. I pulled the apron from my neck and folded it neatly on the counter. It felt heavier than it should have. In the hallway, muffled voices carried faintly through the thin walls. Andrew's laugh rang out, bright and careless. "You really went through with it?" a male voice asked, tone thick with amusement. "Of course," Andrew replied, his voice dripping with pride. It was the perfect send-off. Classic Taylor, right? So eager to please. She probably thinks we were being sincere. They both laughed. "She should thank me," Andrew added. I gave her a chance to feel useful one last time. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they surprised me, but because they didn't. My nails dug into my palms. I blinked back, the sting in my eyes, refusing to let the tears fall here where anyone could see. A door clicked open down the hall. I stepped back into the break room shadows, not wanting to risk being spotted. Footsteps faded as Andrew and his friend headed out. Their laughter trailed behind like a bad smell. When the coast was clear, I grabbed my bag and walked to my car, my steps slow and heavy. The evening air was sharp and cool, but it did nothing to clear the fog in my head. Inside the car, I gripped the steering wheel and stared straight ahead. The parking lot was almost empty now, only a few cars left scattered like abandoned thoughts. I didn't start the engine. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. A memory surfaced, Andrew's voice months ago, casual over dinner. "You should be grateful," he'd said, slicing into his steak. "Not many women your age get to ride the coattails of someone on the way up." I'd smiled then, too tired to fight. Tonight the words tasted sour. I finally turned the key and pulled out of the lot, headlights cutting through the gathering dark. At home the house felt unnervingly quiet. I toed off my shoes in the entryway and let my bag drop to the floor. In the kitchen the clock ticked loudly, each second stretching too long. I didn't bother with dinner. The thought of food made my stomach turn. Instead I climbed the stairs and went straight to the bedroom. Andrew wasn't home yet. Probably out celebrating his little show with his colleagues. Or maybe he was with someone else. The thought didn't bring anger, not yet. Just a dull, heavy kind of knowing. I lay on my back in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Shadows from the streetlight outside danced across the plaster. Every insult replayed in my head like a broken record. Unpolished. Lucky to have him. Too soft for the real world. Each one felt like it had carved a notch into my skin over the years. I thought I'd grown numb to them. But tonight proved I hadn't. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Andrew. "Thanks for being such a good sport today. Everyone loved it. You really made an impression." I stared at the screen until it went black again. Downstairs, the faint sound of a vacuum cleaner hummed in the background. At first, I thought it was my imagination. But then I remembered, tonight was the janitor's shift. I sat up listening. The hum stopped. Footsteps moved across the tile. A door opened, then closed softly. I didn't know that same janitor had been in the break room earlier, emptying bins as the laughter erupted around me. I didn't see him pause by the doorway, his eyes narrowing. I didn't hear the quiet curse under his breath as Andrew's voice carried across the room, dripping with mockery. But later, long after I'd left, he pulled a USB drive from his pocket and connected it to the security system's monitor. His fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. He copied a file, break room 3:23 p.m., and tucked the drive into a plain white envelope. On the front he wrote, "To Luke C. Urgent." He slipped it into his satchel and glanced over his shoulder, the break room now silent and dark. Upstairs, I curled into myself beneath the covers. I wasn't crying anymore. The tears had dried up somewhere between the office and here. Now there was only a quiet kind of clarity settling in. Like the sound after a storm. For years I'd let them define me. At work. At home. I thought being kind, helpful, and agreeable would make people see my worth. But tonight proved something I should have realized long ago. To them I wasn't a person. I was a convenience. And something deep inside me whispered, soft but certain, "That's over now." The morning light streamed through the blinds in thin, pale ribbons. I sat at the edge of my bed staring down at my shoes. My fingers fumbled with the laces as if they belonged to someone else. Each knot felt clumsy, my mind still fogged from a sleepless night. Downstairs, the faint clink of keys and the low whir of the coffee machine reminded me Andrew was already up. I could hear him humming, a carefree tune that felt almost mocking now. "You heading in early too?" he called out as I came down the stairs. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady despite the tightness in my chest. He flashed me a grin over his shoulder, coffee mug in hand. "Good luck today. You've got one last shift to shine." I didn't reply. The drive to the office was quiet. For once, Andrew didn't fill the silence with his usual self-congratulating chatter. Maybe he was still half asleep. Or maybe he was replaying yesterday's farewell in his head and enjoying the memory. At the parking lot he hopped out, smoothing his tie. "See you inside." I watched him stride ahead, shoulders back, every step screaming confidence. The office felt different. Not visibly so. People still sat at their desks, fingers tapping keyboards, phones ringing in sharp bursts. But there was a charge in the air like static before a storm. I walked to my desk, head down. A few colleagues glanced up. Their expressions were strange, tight-lipped, wary. One woman looked like she wanted to speak but thought better of it and turned away. I sank into my chair and busied myself with shutting down my inbox. It was my last day and I just wanted to get through it quietly. Half an hour later my phone vibrated. Unknown number. "Taylor? This is Luke Collins." The CEO's voice was calm, measured, but there was something beneath it, an edge that made my stomach knot. "I need you in my office," he said. "Right now." My first instinct was panic. Had I done something wrong? But I hadn't. I'd spent years walking on eggshells, never stepping out of line. "Of course," I said, forcing my voice not to waver. As I stood, eyes followed me. Whispers stirred in my wake like a breeze through dry leaves. Luke's office sat at the end of a long hall lined with frosted glass panels. I'd only been there once before years ago to drop off signed HR forms. Today the door stood ajar. "Come in," Luke called before I could knock. He was standing by the window, hands clasped behind his back. His tall frame cut a sharp silhouette against the sunlight. "Taylor," he said, turning to face me. His eyes, usually warm in company photos, were cold now. Focused. "Sir," I managed, my palms damp. "Sit." He gestured to a chair. I lowered myself onto the edge, fingers twisting in my lap. He didn't speak immediately. Instead he tapped a key on his laptop. The screen came alive and I saw my own hunched figure, apron tied clumsily around my waist. The break room. Yesterday. Voices carried across the speakers. Laughter. Sarcasm. Andrew's voice, loud and clear. She should thank me for letting her feel useful one last time. I stared at the screen, my throat thick. "I don't want to make you relive this," Luke said evenly, "but I had to understand the full picture." I nodded, unable to speak. He closed the laptop and sat across from me. For a moment he just studied me like he was weighing what to say next. I built this company on the idea of respect, he said finally. What I just watched violates everything we stand for. I opened my mouth but no words came out. Andrew thought this was funny? Luke's jaw tightened. And your colleagues, none of them intervened. They didn't, I said softly. His eyes softened slightly. Taylor, I'm deeply sorry. A knock at the door interrupted us. Come in, Luke said sharply. A young assistant stepped in holding a stack of printed emails. These just came in, sir. From staff. Luke took them with a nod. He flipped through quickly, his expression unreadable. Apologies, he murmured. All of them. Seems they've realized their mistake. I blinked. Apologies. He looked at me directly. After I sent my email this morning informing them their jobs depended on it. My heart thudded. You've what? He leaned back slightly, steepling his fingers. At 10 a.m. I sent a company-wide memo. I said every employee involved in yesterday's incident had until noon to deliver a personal apology in my office, or hand in their resignations. I stared at him. They humiliated you, Taylor. They betrayed the culture I've worked to create. That won't stand. Outside the office I heard raised voices. Someone was crying. The assistant returned with more printed apologies. It's chaos out there, sir. HR is fielding calls non-stop. Good, Luke said simply. He looked at me again. I'm not asking for your forgiveness on their behalf. That's up to you. But I won't let this slide. I swallowed hard. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he said. But I'd like you to stay until noon. Then we'll address this together. Address it. He gave a small, sharp nod. Publicly. As I left Luke's office, the atmosphere outside was charged. Colleagues stood in small, nervous clusters. Some avoided my gaze. Others looked at me like they wanted to speak but couldn't. Andrew wasn't among them. In the break room I heard someone whisper, "Did you see the email? He's furious." "He's going to fire Andrew," another voice replied. I kept walking head high though my legs felt like jelly. For the first time in years I wasn't invisible. The air in Luke's office was so thick I could almost taste it. Stale, heavy, clinging like humidity before a thunderstorm. 15 people stood pressed against the far wall, shoulder to shoulder, their eyes darting nervously as I stepped inside. Some stared down at their shoes. Others fidgeted with their sleeves. One man kept rubbing his palms together, the faint squeak of his skin breaking the silence. At the center of it all stood Andrew. His tie was crooked, his face pale. The smirk I'd come to associate with him was gone, replaced by a taut line across his mouth. Luke didn't acknowledge me at first. He remained seated behind his wide oak desk, fingers laced together as his eyes swept over the group. "You humiliated her," he said evenly, his voice low but sharp enough to slice through the room. "Now it's your turn." Nobody spoke. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. One by one they stepped forward. "Taylor." Margaret, the office manager, was the first. Her voice wavered as she clasped her hands tightly. I'm sorry. I should have said something yesterday. It wasn't right. None of it was. Her words felt rehearsed, like someone practicing lines before a play. Next came Daniel, the young intern who'd laughed the loudest during my so-called send-off. His cheeks were flushed. "I'm really sorry, Taylor. I didn't mean to, well, I didn't think. I just went along with the crowd." Went along with the crowd. The phrase stung more than I expected. As each colleague stumbled through their apologies, I felt no warmth. No sense of relief. Their words were hollow, born not of guilt but of fear. I watched them the way one might watch a play. Detached. Observing actors in a story they barely understood. Finally, Andrew stepped forward. He didn't look at me. Not at first. His hands were shoved into his pockets, his jaw tight. "Taylor," he began, his voice lower than usual. I'm sorry. I didn't mean." "Didn't mean what?" Luke cut in, his tone like steel striking concrete. Andrew blinked, caught off guard. "I didn't mean to humiliate her. I thought." "You thought." Luke's voice rose slightly. "You thought making an employee cook, serve and clean for her own farewell party was, what? Team building? A joke." Andrew swallowed hard. "It was meant to be light-hearted." "Light-hearted?" Luke leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Watching her scrub plates while you all laughed felt light-hearted to you? Andrew's silence was answer enough. Luke straightened, his expression hardening. Andrew, you've undermined this company's values, humiliated a colleague, and failed as a leader. Effective immediately, you're demoted. You'll take over Taylor's old role. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Luke's gaze didn't waver. Let's see how well you handle being invisible. Andrew's head jerked up, shock flickering across his face. Sir, please. No, Luke's tone left no room for argument. You'll report to the new department head starting Monday. And if I hear so much as a whisper of this behavior again, you won't have a job to come back to. Andrew's lips parted like he wanted to protest, but no sound came out. He glanced at me then, just for a second before dropping his gaze. The others shuffled awkwardly. No one dared speak. Luke looked at me. His eyes softened slightly. Taylor, I know words can't undo what happened. But you deserve to hear these apologies face to face. I met his gaze and nodded once. Do you want to say anything? He asked gently. I turned to face the group. 15 pairs of eyes stared back, some glistening with tears, others dull with shame. For years I'd been the quiet one. The one who kept her head down, who smoothed things over, who stayed invisible because it was easier than being seen. But today I wasn't invisible. You all showed me who you are yesterday, I said, my voice steady. And I'll never forget it. A few lowered their heads. One woman sniffled softly. You didn't just stand by, you laughed. You joined in. You made me feel like I didn't matter. And the worst part is, I expected it. That's how little faith I had left. I let the silence settle over them like a heavy curtain. But I want you to know something. This isn't about revenge. It's about respect. I hope, truly hope, you learn to treat the next quiet one better than you treated me. Luke nodded, a flicker of approval crossing his face. Thank you, Taylor, he said. You didn't have to come today. But your strength in doing so speaks volumes. He turned back to the group. You're all dismissed. Except Andrew. One by one they filed out, avoiding my eyes as they passed. Some mumbled another apology. Others stayed silent. When only Andrew remained, Luke stood. You've got a lot to reflect on. Start by cleaning out your office. Andrew nodded stiffly and left without a word. The door clicked shut behind him. Luke exhaled slowly and looked at me. Taylor, I've spoken with HR. There's a consulting position open if you're interested. It's remote, flexible hours and, frankly, pays better than what you've been earning. My breath caught. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a fresh start, he said. I didn't answer right away. Think about it, he added gently. I stepped out into the hall, the weight of the confrontation still heavy on my shoulders. The office was unnaturally quiet, like everyone was holding their breath. As I walked past my old desk, I saw Andrew standing there, shoving his belongings into a cardboard box. For a moment our eyes met. His face was pale, his jaw tight. But there was no apology in his expression now, just bitterness. I didn't stop. I walked past my old desk one last time, the familiar scuff marks on the floor and faint smell of stale coffee clinging to the air. Andrew was hunched over, shoving papers into a box with sharp, jerky movements. His tie was loosened, his face pale and tight, but he didn't look up. Not when my heels clicked past him. Not when my bag brushed the edge of the cubicle. I didn't stop. There was no satisfaction in seeing him like that, only a strange, quiet calm settling in my chest. In my hands I held a plain manila envelope. My final paycheck, some HR documents, and a small note from Luke. Taylor, the offer still stands. You'd be a tremendous asset. Whatever you decide, know this company will always value you now. I tucked it into my bag without reading further. Back at my desk, I gathered the last few belongings. An old mug with faint lipstick stains, a framed photo of my garden in bloom, a pack of sticky notes I never used. Funny how 10 years of work could be reduced to a single cardboard box. I brushed my fingers across the desk's surface one final time. It felt strange. No anger, no tears, just a lightness I couldn't explain. As I slid my phone into my bag, a new notification popped up. Church's new role offer. Taylor, as per Luke's suggestion, we're extending an official offer for the remote consulting position we discussed. Details attached. Please review and respond at your convenience. I opened the email. Better pay. Flexible hours. Respect baked into every line. For a moment I stared at the screen, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Before heading out, I turned one last time to the room. The office buzzed quietly. Keyboards clicking, printers whirring, hushed conversations flowing like a river I was no longer part of. Some people glanced my way. Most didn't. I didn't expect them to. At the door I paused. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I typed out a message to Andrew. Polish this. Attached. A screenshot of his demotion letter. I hit send without hesitation. The sunlight outside was blinding, warm against my skin. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was rushing anywhere. I didn't feel tethered to expectations or weighed down by the invisible chains of staying quiet to keep the peace. I drew in a deep breath, tasting spring on the breeze. The world seemed bigger somehow. At the parking lot's edge, I spotted the janitor from the other night. Frank, I think his name was. He was pushing a cart toward the maintenance shed, his steps unhurried. I caught his eye and nodded. He gave me a small smile, a knowing one. We didn't need words. On the drive home my phone buzzed. Messages stacked one after another. Andrew, that wasn't fair. You think you're so clever. Andrew, you won't last a month out there without me. Andrew, enjoy your little victory. It won't last. I set the phone face down on the passenger seat and kept driving. Home felt different too. Brighter somehow. I set the box down by the door and slipped off my shoes. The living room clock ticked quietly. I walked over to the window, watching the afternoon sun spill across the garden. A robin darted across the yard, landing on the fence before taking off again. For the first time in years I didn't feel small. I felt free. Later that evening I brewed a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. The offer email glowed softly on my laptop screen. I reread it, weighing the possibilities. I could take it. Prove I wasn't just lucky to have Andrew. Prove I'd been capable all along. But even if I didn't, I'd still won. The victory wasn't in the consulting offer or in Andrew's demotion. It was in knowing I'd survived. Every insult, every dismissal, every time they made me feel invisible. And I'd walked away stronger. As dusk settled, my phone buzzed once more. Another message from Andrew. You think this changes anything? You're still you, Taylor. You'll never be enough. I stared at the screen for a long moment before deleting the thread. No reply. No anger. Just silence. The sky deepened to a soft lavender. I stepped outside, feeling the cool air kiss my skin. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. A new chapter. One I would write entirely on my own terms. I didn't look back at the house. Or the office. Or the years that had felt like a slow erasure. I didn't need to. The sweetest victory was in walking forward. Lighter, stronger, free. If Taylor's quiet triumph gave you chills, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when she texted Andrew Polish this, with his demotion letter. What was your favorite moment? Share it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss an upload.